This is the notes for part 2 on using inductive reasoning, and you should go get this paper from Ms. Simpson if you haven't got it yet, and you should follow along on the notes. So this is where we're actually going to use the inductive reasoning. And if you remember on the previous part, we talked about how inductive reasoning is where we start with a specific fact and then we come up with a general conclusion. So these problems generally look like this, where we have a pattern. I'm showing you this pattern and you're going to come up with what the rule is. So this is like dice, and we're going to figure out what do we think the pattern is. Well, I think this one is pretty obvious. We have 1, then 2, then 3. The next one would have 4. And if you actually know what dice look like, they look like this for 4. And on your homework problems, they're going to ask for what are the next 3 in the pattern, so we're going to go ahead and do that here. So what would the next one look like? Well, it would look like 5. And then the next one would look like 6. Okay, the next problem looks like this, where it says predict the next number. And again, we're going to pick 3, because that's what you have on the problems you're going to work out on your own. And you have to figure out what's happening each time. Well, I can think through this and think, well, did they multiply times something to go from 1 to the next one? Or did they add by something, subtract, divide? What did they do? Well, in this case, each time they did plus 3. And I figured that out by doing some guessing and checking and trying to figure out how they got it. 1 plus 3 is 4, 4 plus 3 is 7, 7 plus 3 is 10, and so on. So to get to my next one, I need to do plus 3. 10 plus 3 is 13. Then to get to the next one, I do plus 13. So I do 13 plus 3 is 16. I do plus 3 here. 16 plus 3 is 19. So that would be my next 3 terms. My next problem looks like this. Did they add the same thing each time? Well, this would be plus 3, and this would be plus 12. So that's not the same thing added each time. What did they do this time? Well, this time they multiplied times 4. So we're going to need to multiply each time. And you might need to get a calculator. 64 times 4 is 256. And then if I do times 4 again to get my next ones, the next one is 1024. And then if I multiply times 4 again, I get 4096. So each time I find the pattern, in this one, my general rule for inductive reasoning is multiply times 4. Then my next one, what did they do on this one? It may take you a few minutes to figure it out. Here, did I multiply times 3 each time? Well, if I multiplied times 3, let's guess a couple of patterns. What if we multiply? Multiply times 3, it works there, but 3 times 3 is 9, so it's not multiplied by 3. Maybe add. Here they do plus 2, but plus 2 here is not right, so that didn't work out either. So you have to figure out what might work. Well, here, if I do plus 2, then this one is plus 3, then this one is plus 4. Oh, I'm starting to see a pattern. This one is plus 5, then the next one's going to be plus 6. 15 plus 6 is 21. What's the next one going to be? It's going to be plus 7. 21 plus 7 is 28. The next one is going to be plus 8. 28 plus 8 is 36. So sometimes the pattern's a little more complicated. So remember that in inductive reasoning, we're making a prediction or a rule of what's happening based on the pattern we see. And here's just another example of inductive reasoning. You need to take this, finish this part, write all your notes down, show Ms. Simpson you have this part done, and then get the problems you're going to work on this part. As you work these problems, notice at the top, these first ones ask you to figure out what a specific number is. So you may have to go out and do a whole bunch. This one asks you what the how many squares are going to be in this 7th one. So this is the 1st, 2nd, 3rd. You're going to have to figure out to the 7th what's happening. Then on these, it asks you to do the next 3 in the pattern. When you look on the Google form, this will be the number you fill in for 5A, 5B, and 5C. Then you have a couple of word problems down here that you're going to have to really think through and really figure out what the answers are. On these, be sure you're just putting the number in as the answer on each one of these.